For decades, the ocean has remained the final barrier to human understanding, a realm so vast and unmapped that even the most advanced technologies fail to penetrate its deeper secrets. Despite the development of high-precision satellites, deep-sea scanners, and powerful sonar systems, the world's oceans continue to emit signals that defied all logic. The earliest of these anomalies, barely noticeable at the time, appeared in the mid-20th century as low-frequency acoustic voids, entire regions of water where sonar pulses simply vanished. At first, these gaps were dismissed as technical malfunctions. Only years later did researchers understand no known device could create such a consistent, wideband disappearance of sound. Something colossal, something alive was moving through the water, swallowing the acoustic field around it and leaving behind an unnerving, absolute silence. Subsequent analysis revealed an even more disturbing truth. The acoustic shadows created by this phenomenon were so wide and dense that scientists, for the first time, estimated the possible size of the object, at least 180–200 meters long. The figure was impossible. Even the largest known animals, ancient marine reptiles, or the modern blue whale barely approached 1/6 of that length. Yet repeated signals, recorded across different oceanic regions and decades apart, displayed identical acoustic signatures. This pointed not to multiple creatures, but to one single, gigantic organism whose movements were so immense that they reshaped the very physics of the surrounding water. The first indirect confirmations came from whales. In areas where these acoustic voids were detected, researchers observed abrupt behavioral changes among entire pods. Groups of sperm whales, usually calm and steady in their migration, suddenly altered direction, fleeing hundreds of kilometers off their established routes. Panic bursts were recorded, erratic dives, frantic surface breaks, and distress vocalizations that whales emit only in the presence of extreme danger. On several occasions, scientists documented unusually deep scars along the bodies of whales parallel, raked wounds that looked as if they were brushed by massive ribbed fins or scraped against a rough, gargantuan surface. Eventually, certain ocean zones became places whales actively avoided. These dead corridors, as marine biologists described them, formed in regions where sudden pressure spikes were detected, signs that the massive organism had risen closer to the surface. One such event coincided with the snapping of an 80-kilometer deep-sea cable. Segments of the cable were torn from their anchors. On the insulation, specialists discovered peculiar indentations, rough patterned impressions resembling the texture of thick, coarse biological plating. Based on the shapes and spacing, the passing structure was estimated to be at least 15 meters wide. Autonomous deep-sea drones sent to investigate frequently vanished or resurfaced, severely damaged. Some returned with dents the size of small cars, the metal bent inward as if crushed by overwhelming force. Analysis showed the pressure required to deform the hulls exceeded the bite force of any known predator. On one drone, investigators found long, mirrored grooves along the frame patterns consistent with teeth-like structures, each mark nearly a meter apart. Nothing in the known oceanic fauna possessed jaws of such scale. Even more unsettling was the creature's apparent awareness. Whenever active sonar beams targeted the suspected region, the object would vanish from detection, either absorbing the signal entirely or abruptly shifting direction. This behavior suggested a primitive but effective sensitivity to acoustic changes. Many researchers theorized the organism could sense the minute vibrations produced by scanning pulses and react before the equipment registered a direct hit. Such precision implied not instinct alone, but a form of deliberate avoidance. The deep ocean microphones captured another clue: the creature's voice. Ultra-low vibrations, so powerful they overloaded the equipment, reverberated through the water. Spectral analysis revealed 3 stable harmonics, typical of biological resonance, but far beyond the scale of any known vocal organ. Some hypothesized these were navigational calls, allowing the creature to orient itself across vast distances. Others suggested it used acoustic pressure to hunt. Regardless of the purpose, the energy output was immense, many times greater than that of the loudest whale species. By combining acoustic reflection data and hydrodynamic modeling, researchers constructed a theoretical profile of the organism. It appeared to have an elongated body, disproportionately massive fins with a span of up to 40 meters, and an enormous skull structure with a wide lower jaw, capable of generating significant underwater resonance. Its silhouette bore superficial resemblance to ancient marine reptiles, yet exceeded them in scale by an order of magnitude. Some scientists propose that the creature might represent a separate evolutionary branch, adapted to crushing pressure, near total darkness, and the isolation of abyssal trenches. Over time, a chilling consensus formed. The entity roaming the ocean's depths was not only unimaginably large, it was powerful, reactive, and disturbingly aware of its surroundings. It frightened whales from hundreds of kilometers away, disrupted migration patterns, crushed machinery, swallowed sonar signals, and seemed to understand when it was being observed. It left behind no visual evidence, no remains, not even surface disturbances, only torn cables, damaged drones, pressure anomalies, and patches of oppressive silence. Piece by piece, the data suggested the existence of a 200-meter-long abyssal predator, an ancient giant that did not want to be found. And each rare trace it left behind felt less like a clue and more like a warning. As the evidence for the existence of a massive abyssal organism accumulated, scientific institutions across several nations intensified their attempts to capture visual proof. The absence of any clear imagery remained the primary obstacle preventing the phenomenon from being formally recognized. Acoustic signatures, pressure anomalies, and damaged equipment were compelling, but they could all be dismissed as misinterpretations or extreme coincidences. Only visual documentation and indisputable record could transform the growing suspicion into undeniable fact. Yet every attempt to record the creature ended in failure, often in ways that defied technological explanation. The first comprehensive initiative involved a network of high-resolution deep-sea cameras tethered to a series of monitoring buoys. These units operated independently, transmitting footage directly to satellites. For several weeks, the equipment functioned flawlessly, but the moment the sensors indicated the approach of a large moving mass, presumably the same colossal organism, the system began to degrade. Video feeds became unstable, darkened, flickered, and eventually dissolved into static. The timestamps revealed a pattern. The interference always began exactly 6:12 seconds before the pressure sensors registered the disturbance. It was as if the creature generated an electromagnetic field or pressure wave capable of overwhelming electronics before it even arrived. Some scientists speculated that the interference was merely a consequence of turbulence or the rapid shift of water density around the creature's body. Others believed it was a form of biological defense mechanism, unintentional perhaps, but devastating to equipment. Regardless of the cause, every promising moment of footage ended the same way: a blur of blinking pixels, a sudden blackout, and then total silence. A more ambitious attempt was made using autonomous submersible drones equipped with reinforced hulls and next-generation imaging systems. These drones were designed to withstand extreme depths, temperatures, and pressure gradients. Their sensors were hardened against magnetic anomalies, and the cameras were shielded from interference. Yet even these machines failed. One drone transmitted a sequence of frames that, upon later analysis, showed the edge of an enormous shadow descending from above. The silhouette resembled an impossibly large body, thick, tapering, and occupying the entire upper left quadrant of the image. However, the footage abruptly cut off just as the shape began to sharpen. The drone resurfaced 3 days later, heavily damaged. Its structural frame was bent by forces no known animal could exert, and its memory storage was partially corrupted. Engineers were able to restore only fragments. The shadow remained the only discernible trace, a ghostly imprint that offered no concrete detail. Another unmanned vehicle vanished altogether. It descended following a cluster of acoustic disturbances and transmitted data for nearly an hour, before a sudden spike in pressure readings far higher than any natural phenomenon overloaded its sensors. The transmissions ceased mid-frame. Search missions found nothing. No wreckage, no debris, no trace of where the machine had gone. Its disappearance became yet another unsolved entry in a growing catalog of anomalies connected to the creature. Meanwhile, the behavior of marine life grew increasingly erratic. Entire shoals of fish diverged from their usual patterns, forming dense formations that seemed to react to something moving far beneath them. Deep-sea sharks migrated unpredictably, their paths twisting sharply as if avoiding an invisible boundary. Several species of whales refused to enter regions where the creature had been detected, even when such detours meant significant deviations from their migratory routes. Some pods circled nervously at the edges of these zones, emitting low alarm pulses, sounds rarely heard outside of life-threatening encounters. Sensitive sonar platforms also began to register a strange phenomenon, momentary distortions resembling low-frequency pulses that disrupted acoustic mapping. These pulses did not match the profile of natural events, nor were they consistent with known marine species. They appeared intelligent, or at least patterned, spiking only when equipment approached certain depths. While these distortions never provided a direct visual confirmation, they suggested that the creature could sense and react to intrusions long before researchers realized they were being monitored. The most perplexing failures occurred during expeditions that utilized both visual and acoustic equipment simultaneously. In one instance, a deep-water probe detected a massive body approaching slowly from the abyss. The sonar trace displayed a form nearly 200 meters long, with broad, sweeping movements consistent with massive fins. When the imaging system attempted to capture the scene, the camera feed burst into a chaotic mosaic of fractured colors, then pure black. At the same time, the sonar began to distort, bending into irregular patterns before collapsing completely. The system rebooted automatically after several minutes, but by then the organism had vanished into the depths. Every attempt to synchronize visual evidence with sonar data ended with similar failures. It became clear that the creature's mere proximity destabilized the equipment in ways that could not be duplicated in laboratory conditions. Engineers tried replacing components, shielding electronics, isolating sensors, but nothing prevented the same catastrophic breakdowns. This pattern led some researchers to propose that the creature did not simply avoid detection, it nullified it. Whether through inadvertent environmental effects or an evolved biological mechanism, its presence disrupted technology more effectively than any known natural phenomenon. Investigators were left with only fragments of glimpsed shadows, spikes of incomprehensible data, and pressure readings that seemed impossible. With each failed attempt, the creature acquired an almost mythic status. It existed everywhere in the data and nowhere in the images. It was enormous yet invisible, trackable yet unseeable, unmistakably real yet maddeningly elusive. By the end of the second phase of research, scientists had accumulated enough indirect evidence to confirm the presence of a gigantic abyssal organism, but visual proof remained completely out of reach. What haunted researchers most was not the absence of images, but the pattern. Whatever this creature was, it always managed to stay just beyond the edge of perception, as though the darkness itself moved with it, protecting it, sheltering it from the gaze of the surface world. As modern research failed to capture even a single clear image of the colossal abyssal organism, scientists turned toward the past in search of answers. If something of this scale had roamed Earth's oceans for centuries, perhaps millennia, it was unlikely that human history would be entirely devoid of clues. The deeper researchers dug into maritime archives, folklore, geological anomalies, and ancient nautical charts, the more they discovered an unsettling pattern. Accounts scattered across time and geography that hinted at the existence of a creature whose size and behavior aligned eerily well with the modern acoustic data. One of the earliest traces came from pre-industrial whaling records. Several logbooks described the rising of a great black bulwark beneath the ships, a phenomenon attributed at the time to volcanic activity or shifting underwater ridges. But details within these handwritten pages painted a different picture. The water reportedly changed temperature rapidly. Whales fled the scene in panic. and one entry described a slanted ridge of living hide that spanned tens of meters, visible beneath the waves before it descended into obscurity. While the language was archaic and imprecise, the dimensions implied a creature far larger than any whale ever recorded. Another cluster of evidence emerged from the Arctic and subarctic regions, where early polar expeditions noted strange disturbances beneath solid ice. Some explorers reported hearing deep, resonant booms vibrations that traveled through the frozen landscape, shaking the ice sheets despite the absence of any storms or seismic activity. Indigenous groups in these regions had long passed down stories of an immense being that moved under the ice, causing cracks and displacements as it traveled. These oral traditions described a creature with a long, tapering body and an open maw that could swallow a sled whole. Though these accounts were metaphorical, modern researchers recognized the recurring motif of disproportionate jaws, strikingly similar to sonar-based anatomical reconstructions of the unknown organism. More recent historical accounts came from 19th century transoceanic shipping routes. Several steamship captains documented abrupt compass failures, inexplicable underwater impacts against their hulls, and the sudden disappearance of sound beneath their vessels as if the ocean itself had fallen silent. Some logs mentioned feeling a vast presence moving below, large enough to alter the ship's pitch. Marine historians initially classified these events as anomalies caused by uncharted underwater ridges or migrating whale pods, but in light of new data, these entries took on a more ominous meaning. Geological surveys conducted in the early 2000s revealed long trenches and gouges in the seafloor that bore no resemblance to tectonic fractures. These markings stretched for dozens of kilometers across soft sediment with smooth, sweeping arcs that suggested the passage of an enormous living body. The spacing and curvature of the grooves indicated something wide, far wider than any submarine, and flexible, as if pushed aside by massive undulating fins or a serpentine torso. The pattern repeated in several distant oceanic regions, suggesting an ancient migratory route that the creature or its lineage might have followed for thousands of years. A particularly unsettling find surfaced when researchers studied anomalies in deep-sea pressure logs dating back to early Cold War monitoring stations. These early hydroacoustic arrays were designed to detect submarines, yet operators periodically recorded pressure waves that defied classification. The wavelengths were too long and too rhythmic to be geological, and too large to be biological, at least based on known species. For decades, these readings were attributed to unidentified submarines or classified naval operations. But the raw data, reanalyzed using modern tools, matched perfectly with the signatures of the creature currently haunting the ocean's depths. Some evidence came from unexpected sources. A partially intact wooden hull discovered on the Atlantic seafloor displayed crushing damage inconsistent with storms or collisions. The ribs of the vessel had been split outward, not inward, as though a massive force had burst through from below. This suggested an encounter with something capable of generating upward pressure far beyond that of any known marine predator. The preservation conditions indicated the event occurred between the 1700s and early 1800s, centuries before industrial machinery existed that might explain such damage. Even more disturbing were accounts from lighthouse logs along isolated coastlines. Keepers occasionally recorded nights when the sea seemed to heave without the presence of wind, pushing unnaturally large waves toward the shore. On rare occasions, pale reflections described as glimmers of pale gray mass were reported beneath the surface, large enough to distort the moon's reflection across vast areas of water. These sightings were dismissed as illusions, but researchers noted that many corresponded with regions where the creature's acoustic trail had recently been detected. As the evidence grew, a haunting picture emerged. The creature did not simply appear in the modern era. Its presence echoed through centuries of human maritime history, always at the edge of awareness, always beyond reach. It shifted migration routes, altered seafloor geography, shattered wooden ships, and frightened animals that had evolved to survive the most hostile environments on Earth. Yet it never allowed itself to be clearly seen. It existed in shadow, moving quietly, deliberately, as though it belonged to a deeper timeline than humanity itself. Some oceanographers propose that the creature might be a relic lineage, a survivor from a pre-Ice Age ecosystem that adapted to abyssal pressures and survived uncountable environmental shifts. Others theorize that its ability to disrupt electronics and sonar was not a defensive adaptation, but a byproduct of enormous biological structures, perhaps organs evolved for navigation in darkness over unimaginable distances. A few researchers went even further, suggesting that the creature might have been avoiding humans for centuries, not out of fear, but simply because its immense size and sensitivity allowed it to detect approaching threats long before they arrived. The deeper researchers dug, the more they realized that the creature had been there all along, hidden beneath the weight of history, scattered across too many isolated records to be recognized until now. And yet, despite its colossal presence, it remained unseen, undocumented, unproven, a ghost in the abyss, a titan that left behind only traces, scars, and tremors. The past did not bring clarity, it only deepened the mystery. Despite decades of research, hundreds of expeditions, and thousands of hours of acoustic monitoring, the massive abyssal organism remained one of the greatest unresolved mysteries in the history of oceanic science. Its presence was felt everywhere in fractured data, in disrupted migration patterns, in damaged equipment, in ancient writings and modern sonar scans, but never once had it revealed itself to the eye. As technology advanced, expectations grew that the creature would finally be captured in indisputable detail. Instead, the gap between evidence and certainty only widened. By the beginning of the latest stage of exploration, scientists had deployed an array of the most sophisticated instruments ever used in deep-sea research. These included next-generation autonomous underwater vehicles capable of descending 11 kilometers, pressure-resistant imaging modules, high-fidelity acoustic mapping systems, and quantum-stabilized sensors designed to remain functional even under extreme electromagnetic disruption. Yet every time researchers believed they were closing in on the creature, the results eluded them in the same familiar pattern: sudden equipment failures, corrupted footage, and loss of signal. One of the most ambitious attempts involved a synchronized network of surface, midwater, and abyssal sensors spread across a tectonic trench suspected to be part of the creature's migratory route. The system was designed to triangulate sound sources in real time, overlaying acoustic data with high-speed imaging and magnetic field analysis. For a brief 27 minutes, the system detected massive movement. Pressure waves rippled through the trench, low-frequency pulses surged through the water, and a shadow nearly 200 meters long appeared in the sonar grid. Cameras activated automatically, but all three feeds deteriorated at once. The footage stuttered, froze, pixelated, and then dissolved entirely, leaving only faint outlines and fractured colors. When technicians later tried to recover the lost data, they found that the recording units had not malfunctioned. The system behaved as though it had been exposed to a sudden, overwhelming interference field, something powerful enough to distort magnetic sensors and scramble optical processing. The anomaly lasted only seconds. When the sensors came back online, the creature was gone. Researchers could find no definitive cause. No equipment on Earth emitted a field of that intensity at such depths. No natural phenomenon produced a pattern so targeted and so abrupt. It was as if the environment itself shifted around the creature, bending technology out of shape whenever it drew near. Some oceanographers theorize that this distortion might be a byproduct of the creature's sheer size. A body hundreds of meters long, moving through dense water at depth, could conceivably generate extreme pressure gradients or fluid dynamic disturbances that interfered with electronics. Others speculated about a biological mechanism, perhaps some form of internal resonance organ capable of emitting low-frequency bursts that inadvertently disrupted sensitive equipment. A more controversial theory suggested the presence of massive electroreceptors, similar to those of sharks, but on a scale large enough to overwhelm external devices. None of these explanations could be verified. Meanwhile, the ocean continued to show signs of the creature's movements. Satellite imaging registered unusual patterns in surface turbulence, subtle circular distortions not caused by storms, currents, or known fauna. Hydrophones detected pressure spikes consistent with the passage of an enormous organism. Migration routes of whales shifted yet again, with several pods exhibiting abrupt avoidance behavior in regions where the creature had recently been suspected. Even deep-sea thermal maps occasionally recorded fleeting trails of displaced cold water, as though a massive form had silently passed beneath. Yet still, no eyes had seen it. Every expedition returned with the same paradoxical findings: overwhelming indirect evidence paired with complete absence of direct proof. The creature had become a scientific ghost, an anomaly too substantial to ignore, too elusive to confirm. As technology pushed further, new initiatives were proposed: ultra-low frequency imaging, dark water LiDAR, autonomous AI-driven swarms of microdrones, deep-sea neutrino detectors capable of mapping mass movement through subatomic interaction. Each innovation promised to pierce the veil of the abyss at last. Yet none had succeeded, and none could guarantee success in the future. The creature moved through the ocean as if the depths themselves conspired to conceal it. Public interest swelled alongside scientific frustration. Documentaries speculated about an undiscovered apex predator. Theories spread about a relic lineage, a creature older than human civilization. Some suggested that humanity had glimpsed only a juvenile, with adults of the species perhaps far larger. Others argued that the creature might migrate between deep trenches, spending most of its life where no technology could reach. Skeptics insisted that the evidence was insufficient, that each anomaly could be explained individually by known natural processes. But even skeptics struggled to dismiss the pattern. The same pressure waves, the same sonar shadows, the same electromagnetic failures, the same reactions from whales repeating across decades and continents. The creature remained unproven, but increasingly difficult to deny. In the end, the scientific community reached an unusual consensus. The abyssal organism, whatever it was, demanded continued study, not because it threatened humanity, but because it represented something far more profound. A reminder that even in the modern world, the ocean still held secrets beyond comprehension. The search continues. New technologies emerge, new expeditions form, new anomalies appear, and though every attempt to see the creature has failed, none have disproven its existence. In the void between evidence and certainty, the colossal being endures part data, part myth, part unanswered question. A presence too large to ignore, too hidden to reveal itself. A legend sustained not by imagination, but by the weight of the unknown. A reminder that the deepest places on Earth remain uncharted not because we lack the tools, but because something down there chooses not to be found. We upload new videos every single day, so make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's next. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps the channel grow. Tell us in the comments what you'd like to see next. Your ideas might be in our next upload. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of our community. Stay tuned, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.